Hello everyone, this is Professor Keen. Let's continue our discussion of Tom Van Dam and David Harriman's discussion of how to identify the guidepost constellations and the motion of the sun through them. So, you can now always identify, after the last lecture, one or two constellations in any starry sky. Furthermore, you know what stars will be out before you even look, and without any charts. You know the four guidepost constellations: Orion, the Big Dipper, Cassiopeia, and Cygnus, and when and where to locate them. Next, we're going to explore the stars that surround these familiar guidepost constellations, and this will allow us to know every bright star that is in the sky. But first, there's a bit of a detail which is going to be very important to know when you first start looking outside for the guidepost constellations. Orion follows about the same path across the sky as the sun, even when you can't see him. Orion rises where the sun rises and follows the sun's path across the sky and sets where the sun sets. So if you live in the United States, Canada, or Europe, you can watch Orion move across the sky from east to west. This picture of this celestial sphere rotating around the Earth is very similar to what you saw when we were looking at Stellarium software. And again, I want to emphasize that technically speaking, the sun does not move exactly on the same path as Orion. The sun is going to be a little bit of a different path, but Harriman and Van Dam are simplifying things a bit for the sake of making it easy for beginners. Now, as I mentioned, the sun moves in about the same path as Orion across the sky from east to west. But our other three guidepost constellations move across the sky on a different path. So you have to turn around toward the north in order to see them. The constellations, the Big Dipper, the Queen Cassiopeia, and the Swan Cygnus, are still following each other in the same order, but they're going to be at the correct so we don't expect to see them on the same arc across the sky as we see the sun or as we see Orion. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So when you want to see Orion, you look more toward the southern part of the sky. When you want to see the Queen, the Swan, or the Dipper, you have to look more toward the northern part of the sky. Nonetheless, if you imagine this sphere, the celestial sphere, rotating around us about the North Pole, these will occupy four different quadrants of the sky. Okay, now let's talk about the four stories. I find this to be very helpful in identifying constellations. Recognizing the guideposts and understanding when they appear lets you know what part of the sky you're looking at. Once you get oriented by finding Orion or one of the other guideposts, then you can find all of the bright stars and constellations. There are only about 2,000 stars that you can see in the sky on a clear night with the naked eye, and only about 200 of these are interesting. You could try to memorize all of them, but a story is a more memorable and fun way to remember the stars and the constellations. Stories about the skies have been told and retold since ancient times. We've taken the four guidepost constellations and created an unforgettable story about each. So four guidepost constellations and created an unforgettable story about each to guide you through the skies and to help you remember where to look to find your favorite bright stars. So let's take a look at the constellations and the bright stars in each part of the sky. There are four main pictures that you're going to have to remember. First of all is Orion's hunting party. The second one is called The Queen Goes Fishing. The third is a dipper for a distressed damsel. And the fourth is Cygnus happens upon a battle. Orion the hunter, first of all. Orion the hunter does not travel alone. He leads an impressive hunting party, including a chariot driver, a dog, the dog's bone, and some twins. Along the way, he encounters a ferocious bull that charges toward his group. It won't be long before you know this story by heart and can easily find these constellations. But we won't try to learn them all at once. First, we'll just learn how to find all of the bright stars that are around Orion. Orion points to 5 of the brightest stars in the sky. First of all, Aldebaran is found by following the lines of Orion's belt upward. Secondly, Capella is above Orion's right foot Rigel. Third, Pollux is kitty corner up from Orion's shoulder, which is called Betelgeuse. Fourth, Procyon is to the left of Orion's shoulders. And fifth, Sirius can be found by following the line of Orion's belt downward. Together, along with Rigel, Orion's foot, this formidable group is known as the Winter Hexagon. The 6 stars of the hexagon, plus Betelgeuse in the middle, comprise nearly half of the 15 brightest stars in the northern hemisphere. If the sky is clear and dark enough to see Orion, then these 7 will be visible. Before we finish telling the tale of Orion, we need to discuss why we make a big deal out of some stars and ignore others. It's obvious to any stargazer that some stars are brighter than others. If we want to write about stars and constellations, we need a systematic way to describe their brightness. The Greek astronomer Hipparchus invented such a system around 150 years before Christ, when he made the first star catalog. He called the 21 brightest stars first magnitude. The stars that are about half as bright as those he called second magnitude, and so on down to sixth magnitude, the dimmest stars that you can see without a telescope. There are not that many really bright stars in the sky, and it doesn't take very long to know all of them. The first magnitude stars in order of brightness are as follows, and I show them here on the screen. First is Sirius. Second is Canopus. Third is Alpha Centauri. Fourth is Arcturus. Fifth is Vega. Sixth is Capella. Seventh is Rigel. Eighth is Procyon. Ninth is Icanar. 10th is Beta Centauri. 11th is Betelgeuse. 12th is Altair. 13th is Aldebaran. 14th is Acrux. 15th is Antares. 16th is Spica. 17th is Pollux. 18th is Fomalhaut. 19th is Deneb. 20th is Becrix. 21st is Regulus. All the best constellations are made from mostly 1, 2, and 3 magnitude stars, first, second, and third magnitude stars. That means you can become quite a stargazing expert with only about 200 stars. First magnitude, there are 21 stars. Second magnitude, there are about 50 stars. Third magnitude, there are about 170 stars. Fourth magnitude, about 500 stars. Fifth magnitude, about 1,600 stars. And sixth magnitude, about 5,000 stars. Here we have renumbered the first magnitude star list, including only the 15 bright stars that you can see from the northern latitudes. Also, a poem to help you remember their names. Sirius Arctic Voyagers capably rig protractors for Betelgeuse's altitude, although Antarctic sailors are probably faster divining Regulus. Orion has 2 first magnitude stars, number 5 Rigel and number 7 Betelgeuse. Orion is such a striking sight, not just because of Rigel and Betelgeuse, but also because the other 5 stars of his basic shape are also quite bright. All 5 are second-order magnitude stars. In fact, all 7 of Orion's main stars would make a top 50 list. On a very dark, clear night, more details of Orion become visible. Now, we can pick out his head, club, shield, and sword. But these features are made up of dimmer stars and require excellent viewing conditions. Depending on where you usually stargaze, you may not see all the details of Orion. It's fun to be able to recognize Orion and other constellations regardless of how many of the stars are visible. On an average viewing night, Orion may appear like this. The main 7 stars of his body are clearly visible, and you can see his head, the center of his shield, and the tip of his sword. It takes darker skies to make out the rest of his shield and his club. Now that we can find Orion and pick out the bright stars of the winter hexagon, let's continue on with the story of Orion's hunting party. Orion wages battle with a fierce beast, Taurus, the bull. Our hero has his shield in position and his club raised to face his bovine foe. Follow the line of his belt up to find Taurus. Over the course of the night, Orion attacks and the bull retreats. Taurus is a large, impressive constellation. His neck is marked by the bright orange star Aldebaran, number 9 on our list. On an average night, you can see his nose, horns, 2 stars in his neck, and 1 in his back. The tip of the bull's rear horn is marked by an interesting group of stars called the Pleiades, also known as the Seven Sisters. Orion's companion rides a chariot as he leads the hunt. Anytime you can see Orion, you can also find his chariot driver, Auriga. Auriga's brightest star is Capella. All we see of the charioteer is his head. He has a pointed hat and a prominent nose. We can imagine that the bright star Capella, 4th brightest in the sky, is his eye. Capella is just a bit brighter than Orion's Rigel and Betelgeuse. Get used to seeing Auriga with his hat and with only part of a nose. These stars are the 4th magnitude, so you'll not see them unless you have a good sky. Orion is accompanied on the hunt by Gemini, the twins, Pollux and Castor. Orion stands between the charging bull and his friends. The pair have joined hands and appear to be scurrying away from the danger. The twins are named the same as the bright stars that mark their heads, Pollux on the left and Castor on the right. The next brightest star in Gemini are the 2 waists and the feet. The hands are not much dimmer and will show up on a decent stargazing night. Despite the dangerous duel raging just behind them, the twins seem unconcerned. They appear to be tossing a bone to Orion's dog. The bone is straight across from Orion's shoulders and below the twins. Technically, Canis Minor is the little dog, but it's hard to justify the name when the constellation only has 2 stars. Calling it the dog's bone seems to make more sense for its shape, and it fits the story better. Both stars in the bone are bright. Procyon ranks number 6, and the other one is about the same as the bull's nose, or Castor's waist. The bone is at almost the same angle as Orion's belt. Every hunter needs a dog, and Orion is no exception. His dog, Canis Major, frolics at his feet. Follow the line of Orion's belt down to the brightest star in the sky, Sirius, on the dog's collar. Faithfully at his master's side, this dog has his eye on the bone just above him. We saved Sirius for the last because sometimes you can see Orion but not the dog. He rises lower and later than Orion, so he is the last of the hunting party to appear. The star Sirius is like a bright blue jewel on the dog's collar. Sirius is much brighter than any other star, more than 3 times brighter than its neighbor Rigel. The constellation Canis Major has 8 fairly bright stars that will show up on a decent night. This completes our first story, the story of Orion's hunting party. If you happen to be outside when Orion is in the sky, you'll be able to find him and all his friends. Now, you should try testing your knowledge by looking at this diagram, trying to identify the constellations, and trying to identify the bright stars.